When you think of wrapping up leftovers, covering a baking tray, or shielding something from burning in the oven, one material comes to mind almost instantly: foil. More specifically, aluminum foil. Yet, despite its shiny silver look and its familiar crinkly sound, many people still call it tinfoil. But here's the big question. If the foil we use in our kitchens is made of aluminum, then why do we keep calling it tinfoil? This is one of those everyday mysteries hiding in plain sight. The name doesn't seem to match the material. So today, let's unravel the history of why is it called tinfoil? Trace it back to where the tin part of the name came from, and find out how this strange naming quirk has managed to stick around, even though tin has almost nothing to do with the foil we buy today. Let's get into it, right here, on History of Simple Things. To understand why we call aluminum foil tinfoil, we need to go back before aluminum foil even existed. Long before kitchens had neat rolls of aluminum sheets, people already had a version of thin metallic wrapping material, and that material was, in fact, made from tin. Tin, a soft silvery metal, was relatively easy to shape and flatten compared to many other metals. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, manufacturers had figured out how to roll tin into extremely thin sheets. This became the earliest form of metallic wrapping we know today. People called it tinfoil simply because it was made out of tin. It was used to wrap candies, preserve food, and even for decorative purposes. The problem with tin, however, was that it wasn't the perfect material for the job. It did the work well enough, but tin had a very noticeable drawback. It gave food a slightly metallic taste. If you've ever heard older generations talk about how chocolate used to taste a little off when it was wrapped in foil, that wasn't imagination. That taste came from actual tin foil leaching a faint metallic flavor into the food. So if tinfoil had its flaws, how did aluminum come into the picture? Well, aluminum was once considered a rare and almost precious material. In fact, in the mid-19th century, aluminum was more valuable than silver. Napoleon III of France even reserved aluminum cutlery for his most honored guests, while others had to settle for gold. That's how prized it was. But everything changed when new refining methods were developed in the late 1800s. The Hall-Héroult process made aluminum far more affordable to produce on a large scale. Suddenly, what was once a luxury metal became accessible for everyday uses. By the early 20th century, aluminum was being rolled out into thin sheets, just like tin had been. Unlike tin, aluminum didn't leave that unpleasant taste on food, and it was more flexible and durable. Aluminum foil quickly proved to be a superior product. By the 1920s and 1930s, major companies had switched to using aluminum foil for packaging candies, chewing gum, and other food items. One of the most famous early adopters was Toblerone chocolate, which used aluminum foil to wrap its triangular bars. Now, here's the interesting part. Even though aluminum foil replaced tinfoil almost entirely by the mid-20th century, the name tinfoil never really disappeared. People kept using it, even though tin was no longer part of the equation. Why? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Habit. For decades, people had gotten used to calling thin sheets of metal wrapped tinfoil. When aluminum foil took over, the name had already dug itself into the culture and everyday speech. Language tends to stick, even when technology changes. Think about it this way. Most of us still say we dial a phone number, even though modern smartphones don't have rotary dials. We still say we're filming a video, even though we're using digital cameras and not rolls of film. And we still talk about tinfoil, even though it hasn't been made from tin for generations. It's one of those linguistic leftovers that never quite got updated. Fast forward to now, and aluminum foil has become one of the most common kitchen items worldwide. It's not just for food storage. People use it for cooking, baking, grilling, and even cleaning. Its versatility makes it a must-have in most households. Interestingly, while tinfoil lingers as a word, most packaging clearly says aluminum foil. That's because manufacturers want to highlight the actual material for both marketing and safety reasons. But in everyday conversations, you'll still hear plenty of people casually asking for the tinfoil. So what does this tell us about the name tinfoil? It shows how language often lags behind technology. Words tend to hang around long after the world has moved on. In some ways, the survival of tinfoil is a linguistic fossil, a reminder of a time when tin really was the material of choice. It's also a sign of how sticky old habits can be. Once a term enters the collective vocabulary, it's incredibly hard to shake off, even if it's technically inaccurate. That's why younger generations still learn the word from older ones, keeping the cycle going. Here's another wrinkle. Not everyone around the world uses the word tinfoil. In the US, the term is still pretty common, but in some other English-speaking countries, people are more likely to just say aluminum foil or aluminium foil, depending on the regional spelling. It shows how even common household items can carry subtle differences in naming across cultures. So the next time you grab a roll of foil from the kitchen drawer, take a second to think about it. You're not just holding a shiny sheet of aluminum. You're also holding on to a little bit of history, wrapped up in a name that refuses to fade away. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other bingeable channels. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.